everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a third straight Winnipeg Jets loss. Yeah, folks, 3 straight after 11 straight in a row. All of a sudden you've got this. What do you do? What are you going to do, folks? Are you going to panic? Is it panic time like I did right before I came on and didn't put my light on? There we go. Brighten things up there a little bit. It's an interesting one. So talking with the Winnipeg Jets players, it is clear, talking with their head coach, it is clear they feel like they have fallen off a little bit. I think that's maybe pretty obvious for a lot of people. Always interesting, though, when you hear and this is hilarious. Stu Smith says Bick was right all along. There you go. It's still first place in the league, still a wide margin atop the Western Conference and atop their division. But yes, Bick was right all along. It's all been just a big balloon that has been popped now at this stage. If you take a look at these games here, the one thing I'll say in this situation before we do get started is Winnipeg Jets are right down to the wire in that game. Once again, they go to overtime against the Philadelphia Flyers in their last game. Close before that. This isn't a team that you're going to see entirely not show up on a night. They haven't really done that this year, where they lose 4 or 5-0, where they just didn't look like they belonged in the same building. The Winnipeg Jets, even at their worst, are challenging a team. And I mean, this is a game that means a lot to the New York Islanders, right? They lost their last game. They needed to have a bounce back. They came out and they gave the kind of performance that would suggest that they put the requisite effort in to have that bounce back game. And then they come out and turn that into a win over the Winnipeg Jets. But this wasn't them walking away. It wasn't a lopsided affair. Shot clock at the end of it says 29-28. Head coach is more than happy with the opportunities that his team has created. But no doubt about it, the Winnipeg Jets have gone cold when it comes to their offense. Now, the one thing that they were saying in the dressing room afterwards is this is a team that, and we've talked about this in the past. Ken, actually, I was looking a little bit at the last show to make sure that I got the awards for everybody ready to go. But Ken was talking about how last game, there was some truth serum coming from the likes of Nikolai Ehlers, who, didn't necessarily like his game. So I don't take this as the old school approach by the Winnipeg Jets years ago. That was always them kind of just saying, oh, I liked our game. And, there not being a lot of truth to that. The Jets feel that they are ticking upwards. Now, when they fell off, that's a question. I found it very interesting. It didn't seem like a lot of the players wanted to answer that question. The idea of, okay, well, when would you say you kind of lost this thing? I'm going to go with the theory. And this is one that you'll probably have heard from me before in the past. It's a theory that I've thought sometimes the Winnipeg Jets in the past have not handled success well. But they come back from Four Nations and they beat the St. Louis Blues and they kind of pull it out of the hat. And then they do the same thing the next night against the next game against the San Jose Sharks. Then they have a game against the Ottawa Senators that was maybe a little bit of fool's gold, right? Because they handled that game pretty much, handled it handily, right? But the Ottawa Senators are missing 3 of their most important players. And now they have those players back, and all of a sudden that team's winning again. All of a sudden, some of the players who are missing, Shane Pinto, Brady Tkachuk, are the absolute key Josh Norris, the key pieces in them coming back. So, I mean, I don't want to make too many excuses. Yeah, they're like, I wouldn't do that for the Jets. I always talk about the Jets. They've got depth. We don't use those injuries and things like that as excuses. But the reality is the Winnipeg Jets went and they pulled a rabbit out of a hat in one game. They pulled a rabbit out of a hat in the next game. They had a convincing win over a team that was missing 3 key players up front. And then things start going in the direction that they've gone now because they run into Nashville. And I wonder if there wasn't just a little bit of those things that, I mean, I'd said it on this podcast. The Winnipeg Jets can't lose. That's what we said after that victory that they had over the San Jose Sharks. It just didn't, it seemed like no matter what happened, the Winnipeg Jets were going to come out on top. And I've said this before in the past when the Jets would start, and I'll use the perfect example from earlier this season. I've trotted it out a couple times, but that game earlier out on the West Coast swing where the Winnipeg Jets played the San Jose Sharks, in a game that I just did not like by them at all. And everyone was telling me it's no big deal, whatever. And I said, no, what I'm seeing is a pattern of behavior by the Winnipeg Jets that I don't think is conducive to them continuing winning. I think it's going to bite them, and then it goes and it turns around and it bites them in the very next game against Anaheim. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing the Jets, failing to show up in a game and getting outshot 14-4 in the first period. And I'm not seeing, kind of like a lazy effort, a little bit of a return to the kind of snake charmer. I think what I am seeing, though, is there was a little bit of, Ken and I always have this conversation. I think the Montreal Canadiens were a perfect example of a team that kind of got messed up by their own press clippings, their own belief, but that kind of feeling of having arrived. So the Canadiens fought and were the best team from Christmas right through the month of January. Then they finally fought themselves into a playoff spot, landed in that 8th playoff spot, and then I believe they lost 7 games straight after that. Don't tell me that there wasn't a part of the Montreal Canadiens that did that, got into that playoff spot, and then exhaled a little bit, right? And then you exhale and you feel like, okay, we did it, guys. Now we can kind of adjust and cruise. And what ends up happening is you're not ready for the fight after that. I would suggest maybe the Winnipeg Jets have hit a little bit of that, because what happened at the end of this 11-game win streak, and you know what? They couldn't exhale for so long with this 11-game win streak, because for the longest time they kept winning and winning and winning. And one of those wins was over the Washington Capitals, and yet the Washington Capitals just kept winning and winning and winning. And then all of a sudden, the Jets just didn't seem to be gaining any ground. And then that finally happened. Ken was talking about it on the last show. The Washington Capitals had that 3-game losing streak. All of a sudden, the Winnipeg Jets started getting a little bit of breathing room. All of a sudden, they were up 4 points. Capitals are doing bad. Jets are doing good. The scales are tilting. Now, all of a sudden, it's starting to look like, that race, you're putting them in the rearview mirror. And I wonder if there wasn't a little bit of a combination of, we just can't seem to lose no matter what we do. And, we're finally pulling away. We've finally got this, President's Trophy race is tilting in our favor and everything's going right. I just think that, that it's psychology. And the thing about this is I'm not going to hop all over the Winnipeg Jets and attack them because their psychology caught up with them in a season where they are just kind of running away with things here. I think it's hard to stay focused when that happens. And I think that's what you've seen with the Winnipeg Jets over these last 3 games. When everything is going your way, when it seems like you win, even if in games that you're not supposed to win or you shouldn't have pulled out, it can be hard to stay right razor sharp. The Winnipeg Jets, by their own admission, have not been razor sharp lately. They feel they're moving towards that. I don't necessarily think that this game was that much better of a game than the game that they had against the Philadelphia Flyers, but the team does believe that regardless. These are the highs and lows of a season. And though someone had said earlier on that Bick was right, boy, oh boy, I would need more evidence of this in the form of like an 11-game losing streak before I would be in a situation where I would take a look and say that there's anything about this team that's false gold. They continue to be the standard that the league is chasing. Yes, lost 3 straight games. No one is counting out the Washington Capitals after they lost 3 straight games. Jets having a lull, trying to fight their way out of it. For me, it's as simple as that. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring the man with the best music in the business for his take. Here comes Kenny, folks. Ken, like the Winnipeg Jets or the Montreal Canadiens back then, maybe I felt like I've arrived. I thought I was making sentient points here, and that it's Snags comes out and says Renny sounds like a Donald Trump rant, making no sense and ranting about nothing, getting political and taking Renny down a notch. It's a good thing, Ken. I can't be taken down a notch because I've got. How can you be taken down a notch when you are rocking the Vittorio Rossi clothing that we are rocking here? Both you and I got to say, Ken, pretty spiffy. I thought we took the best dressed category. Maybe if there were Oscars held here tonight, Frankie and the boys would be stepping up and grabbing the gold statue for doing the best job of dressing a couple of journalists here tonight, because that pink tie and blue suit combo always pops, Ken. Looks great. Looks like it's like a gender reveal about to happen. You're either gonna like pop off the tie or pop off the jacket, and whatever left, that's what kind of kid they're having. Either way, it looks amazing, Ken. Of course it does, because we went down to Vittorio Rossi to be clothed. You should do the same. Head on down to Corden Avenue, walk into Vittorio Rossi, loudly proclaim that Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. So let's get right to it, Ken. Third straight loss. I noticed there was a panic button beside you on the desk there. Have you been hammering it with your hands since the last time I saw you?
Buddy, you know what? Cancel the season. I think it's over now. No, yes, Sir Kenneth has arrived. Clear the line to the buffet. No, I'm not hangry at all. I'm in a great mood, but thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, Sean, it's a similar story, but it's not the story that would have someone like Scott O'Neill, sitting on a bus ride to Philadelphia, racking his brain on how to get out of it. This is normal, Sean. We talk about this, every season, but we haven't talked about it much this season because there have been very few stretches of tension for the Winnipeg Jets. I don't even really want to call this tension, but it qualifies as a minor dosage of tension because we haven't seen it in so long. Winless in 3 games. I mean, man, ask teams around the NHL if they'd like to collect points in 12 of 14 games. Yeah, I mean, do the Jets have a couple of bad breakdowns, Bick Ronas? I'm not wearing rose-colored glasses, and the Jets were fine in the game. It was an even hockey game. Once again, the Jets generated ample opportunity, scoring chances, Sean, at let me pull her up quickly here. Scoring chances for 27-18, high dangers 11-8 at 5-on-5. So it's hard to suggest. We're not going to come out here and rant and rave and say the Jets didn't generate offense. I also don't think one of the things, Sean, that has been impressive about the Jets during this run, and especially the last 3, they aren't giving up a lot of odd man rushes. The Jets made a couple of, I think poor choices. Maybe I think is maybe one way to put it. I mean, we'll dig in a little bit deeper, but I think that the Jets got a little bit too aggressive on the penalty kill when Dylan DeMello was on the boards. I don't know that the play for Alex Iafallo was. I mean, I get it. I understand why you go and attack there, but unless you're 100% sure you're going to come out with the puck, I don't think that having the second guy there, the player's not dangerous where he was. He had his back to the boards along the wall near the blue line, right? Or above the hash mark anyway. So when you leave your post and join the scrum, if you will, that caused a little bit of chaos for all of Josh Morrissey and Rasmus Kapari. And then once the puck popped out from Horvat to Nelson, then Alex Iafallo did see that, and he tried to catch Paul Mary before the one-timer hit. But I just think that obviously the spacing just got a little bit stretched out. And obviously it's a great play by the Islanders. Good job to win the battle. But to me, and Sean, we talk about when the Jets penalty kills at their best, they have to be aggressive. So I'm not out here saying Alex Iafallo made a bad choice, but the result for the Winnipeg Jets was bad. And I think it was one of those situations where I don't know that the risk was worth the reward. Even if he comes up with the puck there, at best you get it clear. At worst, you give up a goal, right? So I don't know that we talk about risk-reward ratio. I don't know that the risk-reward ratio hit on that stretch. And then obviously the Jets had a turnover on the game-winning goal. It's a puck that they have control. It behind the net. I mean, I didn't love the exchange. I think it was Hellebuck to Stanley, and then the puck rims around the boards. And I mean, again, Pollock's got a heavy shot. The former Brandon Wheat Kings captain, Grandview product, can really hit it, but the puck goes in off of Alex Iafallo, right? And Murat actually, Tesh actually thought it still hit Rasmus Kupari in front as well. Yes, there was some traffic, but I mean, when the game-winning goal goes off at least one person and maybe a second, to me, that's more bad luck than bad structure. So,
I'm not gonna go with the bad luck because the Jets' first goal is a similar bounce. So
oh no, it's
bounce
that's
for
good luck.
bounce. I'm not
That's
bringing
bad
luck
luck for
into
the
this.
Islanders. I'm not saying
Yeah,
I'm not saying the Jets lost the game because of luck. That
yeah,
specific play is more bad luck than bad structure. But it
yeah.
started with a turnover. So you know what turnovers are? They're avoidable plays and correctable. So that is something the Jets can clean up with relative ease. So yeah, I mean, you make your own luck, and sometimes both teams had an example of good or bad luck depending on the viewpoint. So I don't think this was a game of luck at all. So Jets have some things to clean up, but it's not like they're sitting here saying that I just wrote this. I mean, they're not. It's not a ton of bad habits, and it's not a lack of commitment or effort, as Adam Lowry told us. But it's natural for a team to play hard. But Sean, we can't pretend that the Islanders or the Jets level of desperation is, equated to what it is like to be a member of the Islanders, where basically every day they go to the rink and wonder if there's going to be a fire sale or if you're going to be in the playoffs. So I commend the Islanders for their effort. They got smoked yesterday, Sean, 4-0
Yeah.
by their biggest rival. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't sulk about it and say, oh, well, it's a back-to-back game, so it's an automatic scheduling loss. It was the complete opposite. They found their legs after getting kind of skated into the ground. The shots on goal were 10-2. Next thing you looked up that it was 17-12. So it was a strange game how the game got flipped on its head. But I give the Islanders a lot of credit for turning things around. And quite frankly, it's very odd that they turned the game around, after a very, momentum building power play. I know it didn't lead to a goal for the Jets, but their first power play had excellent movement. And then Adam Lowry, decisively won his fight with Anders Lee, and somehow that sparked the Islanders to get their legs and get going, which is something that does not happen very often.
Yeah, I mean, give them credit. The Jets were all over them, and there was a pushback there, right? And I will say this: I mean, you have to be, if you're a head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, it's one of the things that he should have been happy about. The way the Winnipeg Jets started that game was the way that you want to go up against a team that got run out of the barn last night in a game that they played last night when they're tired. And yes, there's not a lot of travel involved with this, but who cares, right? Like drop that, a back-to-back, regardless of whether or both games are in your home barn, still has its effect. So you got to like that if you are Scott Arniel, but at the same time, boy, oh boy, you cannot like the response by the Winnipeg Jets after that. There was just too wide of a swath of the first period that they allowed the New York Islanders to absolutely control. I mean, I do have to say, Ken, I don't know about you. I touched on it a little bit with the Philadelphia Flyers game. I don't know that I see a huge difference. I know that the Winnipeg Jets are saying, and I talked about it in my intro, I know that the Winnipeg Jets are saying that, this was a step in the right direction and they're closer to their structure and all of these kind of things. I don't know if I'm buying it. I think it's the kind of thing that you say to your team if you're trying to make them feel like giving them the impression they're going in the right direction. So it's like, yeah, you did good. Let's take another step tomorrow, right? Sometimes you got to congratulate someone on something that is not necessarily what it is in order to make them feel like progress is being made. And hey, it's kind of the way of I was talking about the mentality of the game. It's like mentally getting the ball rolling, even if you didn't get the ball rolling. I don't see a huge difference between this game and the last game. Ken, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this as Adam Lowry searching, grasping for straws and trying to make his teammates feel better. I see leadership, but I don't think it's empty calorie kind of words for me. I would argue that the Jets probably played better in this game than the game in St. Louis where they pulled the rabbit out of the hat, scored late in the last minute with a 6-on-5 goal, and then found a way to win later, right? I mean, to me, I do think that their effort was fine. Yeah, I mean, do I think that the Jets are operating at full capacity? No. And Sean, this is another great example of what you often and or almost always talk about. This isn't as easy as just saying, "Oh, well, the Jets didn't have their A game tonight." Well, they didn't have their A game because the Islanders pulled them into the trenches in this game,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, and they were at times kind of stifling, but at also other times, including the start of the game, the Jets started getting the Islanders running around in their own net, and it was basically a shooting gallery. But then the Jets didn't even have a shot for about half a period. And in that span, they also fell behind another goal by giving one up in the opening 133 of the second period. So, and again, let's break down that play. I mean, a lot of people, some people sent me a couple notes. Oh, that's a bad back check by Scheifele. I think there was maybe bad communication, but it was just one of the strangest plays. I mean, Dylan DeMello got his stick on the puck, I think, 3 different times on that play. Once at the blue line, once on the cross ice pass, and then I think he almost got a piece of another one, and neither guy was fully checked. So for me, it seemed like it was just one of those plays that doesn't happen a lot to the best defensive team in the league, but it happened in that situation. So at the same time, I mean, again, to your original question, I do think the Jets played better, and I do think if they use that template, they're going to win 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or whatever that number is, because it is closer to what their structure is. Again, and Josh Morrissey kind of bristled a little bit about the suggestion that that it was just a matter of going from being that diligent for more often than going to it towards a full 60-minute effort, I guess. So, and I didn't mind that. I like the answer too. I mean, I think that, I like when Josh is a little bit prickly after losses. The guy doesn't like to lose, which is part of what makes him great, right? I mean, that to me, I think was fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't see Scott O'Neill or Adam Lowry pushing a false narrative that the Jets got to feel better about themselves in order to get over the hump and score a goal or win. But at the same time, I do think that the Jets are creating some strong offense. But Sean, I also think that when they're at their best and their lines are clicking, they're able to generate even more dangerous chances than what they're getting right now. I think that especially the Jets top line. The Jets top line carried this team. As much as we've talked about depth scoring, the Jets top line has been fantastic. Right now, they're not as cohesive as we're used to seeing them. And even when they're getting the chances, Kyle Connor's getting tons of chances, Sean. Shot attempts since the break are a ridiculous amount. But I think he's gone cold. One goal in 8 games. For a 35 to 45 goal scorer, that's a quiet stretch of hockey, right? I mean, that's a fact. I mean, Scheifele hasn't been as dangerous, neither has Gabe Vilardi. The whole line as a whole, they're having lots of zone time, Sean, but it's not clicking the way it was when they were at their best and when they were, among or at the top of offenses for trios in the NHL. So I think that, again, and I'm only saying it starts at the top. I'm not saying it's only those 3 guys that have to do more. Everyone has to do more. This is the 4th time in 5 games the Jets have been 2 or fewer. 2 of those games have been 1 goal. 2 of them have been 2 goals. When you're the highest scoring team in the NHL, that's not enough most nights. But I appreciate the fact Scott O'Neill said that, their foundation is structure and defense. So if you got to win those games 1-0, that's what you do. But I think that the Jets are, they've proven over the course of the year that they can score, but they need to do a better job of scoring, quite frankly.
Yeah. Let's get into. I'm going to hand the Pristine Roofing wake up call to the Winnipeg Jets power play, which clearly got it tonight. No doubt that means it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want covering all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. He's the guy you want to call, get down at your place. He'll tell you what you need. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your house the Pristine Roofing wake up call. You will be happy you did. Like the Winnipeg Jets are happy that their power play got the Pristine Roofing wake up call tonight. Ken, I'm going to touch on this a little bit and then I'm going to let you roll. But I thought what that power play did well tonight was I thought they did. So I've talked about this in the past about the Winnipeg Jets power play being an intelligent power play, right? About how they kind of poke and prod for the weaknesses, and they seem to get better as the game goes on. Now, I know there's been a lot of times this year where the Winnipeg Jets power play has come out and it just clicked right off the bat, scored really, really early. To me, the Jets all year have had a great power play plan. If you're not prepared for it, they can burn you. They can burn you really quickly. But the thing that I think really has made this as good a power play as it has been is the idea that when teams do prepare, when they do come in with a plan, and when that is a good plan, they're very much able to transition and move to something else. And I thought they did a real good job today of poking and prodding the power play. Now, let's just get this out of the way. The first power play goal is a fluke for the Winnipeg Jets. It ends up in the back of the net. That's fine. But the next one I thought was just a real good example of this power play learning, because what they did was after Josh Morrissey scores that goal from the top, they went to him a couple times to see if they couldn't challenge and score from that spot. Move it over to Mark Scheifele, try and shift the box. The box wasn't really giving anything on that side. Move it around. They tried to get it, like you said, to Kyle Connor, the best scorer on the Winnipeg Jets, and tried to get him opened up. They were not giving Kyle Connor much of anything. I think he tried, I don't know how many shots he had on the power play. Maybe it was one or two, Ken, but it didn't seem to be a lot because they weren't giving him a lot. But what they did is, in noticing that they weren't going to give Kyle Connor anything, and that after he got that first goal, they weren't going to give Josh Morrissey anything, and they weren't giving Mark Scheifele anything, and that they were closing off. They were dedicating a guy down on Gabe Vilardi so that he couldn't go and do those power moves in front of the net that they do. Well, then what they found out in that last power play that they scored on was that if they kept moving the puck around to those guys and forcing the power play or the penalty kill to commit to those guys, that if they moved it down to Nick Ehlers, that Nick Ehlers was going to have a clear path to the net. He tried it once before it happened. They noticed that they weren't covering them off. And what they did is they did a good job of making sure they got the puck to everybody else on the power play so that the Islanders were forced to commit to that and then went right back to a spot they knew they had an opening, which was Nick Ehlers, and he puts it in the back of the net. I thought that it was the first time in a while that we've really seen them do that thing where it's quite simple. Probe, find the weakness, force them to commit to the things that they're doing well, and then get it back to that weakness almost like it's a bluff, like they're not recognizing that the weakness isn't there, but instead all they're doing is just basically sleight of hand or, hey, look over there, before they get it back to the spot that's weak, and boom, it's in the back of the net. That's what I saw in a power play that was just getting smarter as the game went on.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, it even started with the first power play. The first power play had tons of movement, so that was already a start. And on two of the three power plays, Josh Morrissey had a slap shot within the first 5 seconds, right? So that was when the Jets were at their best early in the year. And I mean, even throughout the middle of the year also. When they go into the attack mentality, that is what they're doing effectively. Creating rebounds, creating chaos, mayhem is ensuing. So for me, that was a good start. And I love the fact that, as you mentioned, if they're taking away Kyle Connor's one-timer, and if they're kind of taking away Vilardi, I love that Vilardi ended up in the, pop position in the slot quite a bit in the game today, right? He's had a couple looks from there recently, similar to the look that Ehlers had. So that on the other, the game against the Flyers when Fedotov had the big, Patty Wall windmill special. And So for me, I love the fact that they just worked the other side, and Ehlers basically went for the Gabe Velarde drop step, right, and then went and roofed his shot. I mean that's a smart play, as you mentioned. You know, it seemed like the Islanders were wanting to attack some of the other places, so the Jets attacked one of the spots that's open. I mean, 5-on-4. Guess what? There's going to be an opening, and as Josh Morrissey mentioned post game, Sean, because the Jets have multiple threats, you can't take away all of them. So you take away as many as you can as a penalty killer, but that was open and they made it happen. And Sean, the reason why I mentioned the Jets power play, of course, it was an unlucky bounce off of Holmstrom that fooled Sorokin. But what happened before the shot? They had a bunch of different looks off of puck movement again, which is why I thought that the power play got a reward, because they were, it's like we talked about. The last two games, the Jets' power play was better. It just didn't convert. Now, did it need to be better? Of course. But they sort of, much like we're talking about the game itself and how Lowry and Arneal thought it was closer to what their template is, the power play was closer to their template the last two games, even though it was a 6-game drought, but they got the reward in this game. So I think that sort of also aligns with what the Jets are feeling like. If they play this style of game, they should be able to kind of get back and put this, win this skid or losing streak, however way you want to refer to it, behind them. But yeah, I mean, I thought that the power play was very effective, Sean. I love the fact that, we're fortunate here. The Jets have a bunch of smart assistant coaches, and we hear from them with a fair amount of regularity, right? So Scott Arneal likes to have the assistant coaches involved. He likes to have them speak at the podium. I love the fact that Davis Payne is not only coming out when his team is rolling along and scoring 2 a game. I like the fact that he's out there when the Jets are in the midst of an 0 for 16 drought with the man advantage, and he's out there owning it and saying, I don't think puck luck has a big is a big part of what's been going wrong. He's staring at it right head on, and they went and attacked it, and then they got their reward. So I think it was an important step on the power play. But I mean, as Josh Morrissey pointed out again, Sean, that's the pace and tempo they need to play with, but they need to do that with regularity if they want to stay at 30+% and stay atop of the leaderboard, as Cole Perfetti mentioned in the morning.
This is an interesting one. Corbin Johnson talks about the second. No secondary scoring. Again, I mean, it's no scoring basically outside of the power play. So I don't know that there's outside of the power play. There's not primary scoring here, but it does go to show you, Ken, that the Winnipeg Jets were absolutely on fire and winning 11 straight games.
Yep.
We found ourselves quite often talking over and over again about the second line and how they were having an effect in turning things around. Now, all of a sudden, they've gone cold and we see the Winnipeg Jets losing games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure. And I mean, I spoke with Nino Niederreiter for a story I'm going to write on the off day. That's 8 in a row without a goal for Nino. 8 in a row without a point. That's too long for a guy that has been a consistent 20+ goal scorer, right? I mean, it's too long. It just is. He still has 14. He still has time to get to 20, but he's on a little bit of a drought. And he himself said, I'm someone who needs to be playing better right now. So again, accountability has not been an issue with this team, Sean, which is sort of why I said I have no problem with what Adam Lowry and Scott Arneal said. I agree with them. I think that this was a step forward for them. But Sean, the important part of what Lowry said, there's no moral victories in this league. So you can play close to your template, but ultimately if you don't win, it doesn't matter. But the reason it does matter is because this team has talked all year about process, and their process has been good in these 2 games or better. So, they've got a bunch of players that can elevate and be better, but I don't think any of those players are thinking that they're not, that they're not lacking confidence and they don't think they can get it turned around, which is also important. I don't think there's any self-doubt with this group. But Sean, to your point earlier, this isn't like the Montreal Canadiens, getting fat off their press clippings and then falling into the tank. Like, this is not a team that's going to fall flat on its face. We talked about lessons all year long about what they've learned in the past. Like, I just don't see them, rolling over and suddenly abandoning their system like 2 years ago in the second half or down the stretch.
Well,
I just don't see it.
I'll say this. Okay, before I do, oh no, I'll do that after. I'll say this. I think there's I'm ready to hand out the hot take award, and,
Right on.
the hot take award can go in both directions. A hot take is just like, throw it out there, but a hot, like, when you heat me up with a good comment, I can go. But I'm going to do one of both. I'm going to do hot for the good reason, hot
Love
for
it.
the bad reason. Dorian Wasake says, hard to blame the Jets fans for feeling uneasy. This team's DNA has a history this time of year. We need to be proved otherwise. Now, winning 11 straight and then losing 3 in a row, I'm not going to get into the point where I'm like, here we go, it's happening all over again. But I do entirely say that this is, I've talked about it on this podcast. It seems to be almost less people believing in the Jets this year when I talk to a lot of the national media than there was last year. And that's because the Jets, by their own conduct in the past, have put themselves in a position where people doubt them. They think that they're straw men out there, that they don't have, how many years have they looked good? They were 4th in the league last year, and that didn't get them anywhere. So this is a great hot take in this. And there's another one here that definitely needs to be called out. I don't know where this happened, but someone had suggested earlier on, I guess it got unclicked here at some point, but someone had talked about the Jets going and picking up. Here it is. Corey May says, we lost our window on Wilson. It sucks. What about Brady Tkachuk? This is like, this is wake up. This is as hot takes get. The Ottawa Senators are in the middle of a battle of their own. They're not going. I mean, would you turn around and trade Connor Hellebuck right now in the middle of a playoff race? If you were the Winnipeg Jets, would you have ever condoned or suggested the Winnipeg Jets do that? That would be akin to this. This is the guy who went and showed the value that he has at the Four Nations. They have a lot with this player. Come on, Corey. The Senators are not turning around and moving their captain with one game in hand, just 1 point out of a playoff spot at this stage, and turning things around. So this is a hot take of all hot takes. Regardless, it's too worthy of the hot take award handed out by Flame and Comfort. And hey, listen, I got to get the fireplace insert to invite people over so they can warm themselves by the fire, by the hearth at the Reynolds household. Until then, head on down to Flame and Comfort, and you can take care of those needs on your own. They've got lots of models now, and they're getting ready, Ken, if I'm not mistaken, for a big move coming in the future. So watch for that if you've ever been there before. They've got their traditional store that they're moving away from. Big move in the future. Great to see Flame and Comfort on board here. Also, wanted to bring this in right here because Gift Guy is entirely right. No headband lately and no Jets wins. Sean, did you mess with the magic? Hey, there's only one way to find out, and that's by turning this into a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's hit it, folks. All right, Ken, coming off of, just on fire takes that have like aged extremely well. I remember there was a really, really smart guy in the media, some would say in the national media, who said a long time ago when Dylan Sandberg was missing and going to be missing time, that it would be the most challenging injury that the Winnipeg Jets had faced in the last couple of years. The numbers do not lie from what we've seen when Dylan Sandberg is in and out of the lineup. And here we are again tonight. And we talked before the game, Ken, about, maybe we'd be talking about this on the show. And sure enough, here we are. Do you feel like, and here, there was a comment in here that I think it was almost willing or worthy of the hot take award as well for being a very, very toasty take. Seawalk 1985 says Chevy needs to bring in some D help. If this is what the D core looks like with one injury, yikes. Well, it's a very key injury, and I'm not putting these two players in the same category, but what would the Colorado Avalanche look like with one injury on D if that injury was to Cale Makar? but I've said this before. I think Dylan Sandberg is extremely, extremely important to this team. I feel like tonight was another example of it. What did you see in the loss of that player tonight, Ken? Do you think it had an effect on the outcome of this game?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean the Jets miss Dylan Sandberg. This is not news. We've talked about it all year long. Did they miss him on the penalty kill? Well, the Jets gave up a goal when they got caught running on the penalty kill, so I don't think it was an accident. Yeah, and his 5-on-5 play has also been very solid. I mean, Sean, I think I looked. The only time he was under 20 minutes was that game against the Sharks on last Monday. So, I mean, this is a guy who's been a minute muncher and has been incredibly valuable. So, I think that Hayden Fleury came in and did a nice job for a guy who has played twice in the last month, just under 14 minutes. But I mean, again, is he playing at the same level as Dylan Sandberg when he's in the lineup all the time and playing second pairing minutes and sometimes top pairing minutes? No, I mean, we can't pretend that that's the case. I think that there have been times where Logan Stanley has shown pretty well the last little while here. Is he ready for full-time top 4 minutes? No, I mean, we can't pretend that that's the case either. So, what we've said, Sean, all along, the Jets need at least, they need one defenseman for sure for situations like this. We saw it last year in the first round. When Brendan Dillon left the Jets lineup, they weren't deep enough to battle with a team like the Avalanche. So I think it's kind of the same thing here. Colin Miller is a guy who's given the Jets a lot of quality minutes this year, but, on a Stanley Cup contender, there are some people in the scouting world that believe Colin Miller needs to be the 7th defenseman and not the 6th, at least to start the playoffs if they're healthy. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. And, I'm not blaming this on Colin Miller by any stretch of the imagination. I thought he was fine today. But at the same time, we can't pretend that the Jets, have an opportunity. We can't pretend they don't have an opportunity to upgrade the defense core, which, Sean, we've been talking about this. Second line center, and we're going to get to it in a minute because one of the candidates was in the game and was one of the best players on the ice today. But I think the Jets' priority has to be their back end. They have to look for someone who can be a 5 and maybe slide into a 4 situation if that is what the situation calls for. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, they need help. This is, I mean, I personally think that I mean, and Scott Arniel talked about this before, and I've actually been very, very interested, Ken, in how often when we talk about the value of Dylan Sandberg, you don't get a coach that absolutely sings his praises from the top of the mountain. And he definitely doesn't do that in the way of saying, boy, oh boy, it's tough when you're missing that guy, right? He always likes to kind of bring everyone else up. And I had asked a question earlier on a couple games ago about the effect of this team when he wasn't in the lineup. And he pointed out at that time that there were other injuries on the back end. So he definitely doesn't want to isolate Dylan Sandberg and talk about him as being this guy that the Jets are uber dependent on. And that probably makes sense, Ken, because the last thing you want is Dylan Sandberg potentially getting injured and then making your team feel like, well, the coach said it. How valuable is Dylan Sandberg? We can't survive without him. But boy, oh boy, the numbers are sure telling us. With this one tonight, you're starting to move into the territory of getting close to 500 without him in the lineup, whereas your results with him in the lineup are like over 800 points percentage, right? I definitely think that this team, when he is out almost more than anybody else, it shows how thin they are. And I think the reason for that is because you do not, I mean, what Dylan Sandberg has is he's got that size, right? You can take Colin Miller out. You could, probably even take Dylan DeMello out and put someone else up there to play with Josh Morrissey, because Josh Morrissey, I think, is the kind of player who can carry pretty much anyone at this stage. Move Villy in. Someone made a comment thinking that Villy's done here, or someone was talking about why he didn't get the opportunity tonight. It's the Islanders. They're a big, heavy team, so they went with a much bigger player in Fleury in that situation. But the Winnipeg Jets do not have another defenseman with the size that Dylan Sandberg has. I know what you're going to say, 6'7". I know we're going in that direction, but the point I'm trying to make is, regardless of how people feel about Logan Stanley is not capable of filling the shoes of Dylan Sandberg, logging those minutes, doing it as quietly, snuffing plays as efficiently, being one step ahead of the play that the way that he is, but doing it as being a sizable player. And so the kind of play killing that Dylan Sandberg does all on his own, quietly, just kind of shutting everything down, when that's gone, you start to see what a lot of teams look like, not just the Winnipeg Jets. A lot of teams look like in their defensive zone when you don't have that kind of player. So I agree with you, Ken. They need to add kind of a snuff things out kind of sizable player in that situation. I couldn't agree with you more. You got something to say?
Sorry, and just quickly, I may have mentioned it last game, but I don't remember, so I'm going to... No, I didn't mention it last game. I spoke with our buddy Jason Bukala, who, Sean, will join us on Sunday after the game against the Carolina Hurricanes for a complete trade deadline breakdown and look at the last quarter, just under the last quarter of the season. We were talking the other day, and, about, potential, and, at one point I said to him, could you imagine if the Jets went out and got two more defensemen in maybe a guy like Mario Ferraro and either Ristolainen or Luke Schenn? If you went and did that, now it's less of a priority to go out and augment the forward group. I think they'll still do it, and I think it's still far more likely they get one D and one forward. But, I mean, it's a significant difference if the third pairing is Mario Ferraro and one of Luke Schenn and or Rasmus Ristolainen. Compared to right now, what's happening. So, and just quickly, I mean, Hayden Fleury's 6'4" and kills penalties. For the people wondering why Hainla doesn't play, he doesn't play a big game, and he's also not a penalty killer. So when Sandberg is out, of course it makes sense to dress somebody who is a penalty killer. So, and again, somebody sent me a note saying, "Oh, when is Arniel going to be asked about Hainla?" If you don't know by game 62, it's clear the Jets feel those other players are ahead of Ville Heinola. And even if you don't agree with the assessment, you don't need to ask him again. They've also shown us with their actions how they feel about Ville Heinola. Ville Heinola right now is an insurance policy, and that insurance policy is more important if Neil Pionk is not back for some reason as a pending UFA. Right now, he's not going to be in the lineup. It's just, unless there's a couple of other injuries. And I understand some people have strong feelings about that, but it's the way that it is right now. But what we also have to, say and acknowledge, last year, Nate Schmidt was in the lineup almost all the time. And then all of a sudden, Logan Stanley was playing ahead of him down the stretch, Sean, right? So
yeah,
things can change, and things obviously probably will change in the next couple of days here once the deadline arrives and is completed. So I highlighted Carson Soucy, Sean. That's another guy who plays with a lot of edge. Doesn't seem to be a good fit right now for him in Vancouver. Had a few healthy scratches at various points. Can play both sides. Probably best on the left side. That would be another name to consider depending on the price tag. But just quickly before we get into the awards, and we were talking about it in the morning, Sean. I love the way Brock Nelson played today. He was much more noticeable in this game than he was in the Four Nations face-off, at least from my viewing. He did everything. He did everything that Sean Monahan did for the Jets last year. Good in the circle. He played 20 minutes. He played 5-on-5. He killed penalties. He blocked shots. And to your point to me in the morning, even though, as I mentioned, he doesn't play a traditional Islanders bang and crash game, he won tons of puck battles, and his ability to kind of thwart off a defender like Mark Scheifele does was
Yes.
so apparent in this game.
Yes.
And Sean, what kind of player does Nikolai Ehlers like to play with? A puck possession player who is incredibly smart, like Paul Stastny, like Sean Monahan. So anyway, some people were asking if it was a brawl behind us. We love
there's a hockey game.
Yeah, what we
There's
love
like
about
an old timers
UBS.
hockey game happening, which I always love about coming to UBS. They've always got a hockey game on the ice afterwards. It's old timers, whatever, it's great stuff though. I want to say this. Okay, Trent. Where did I want to go with this? Well,
Trent
the Trent Frederick trade that happened today. I know that North End Rick got a hold of me, said he would have loved to have seen him come to the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, I don't know if it goes that way in the playoffs, but I will say this. Lowry fighting tonight, getting another fight. He wins that fight. I think they had a good shot of his knuckles after the fight, and I think a lot of people looked at that and thought, oh, like basically if you fight a guy with a visor, that's what your knuckles are going to look like after a fight, period. That's not a sign of him getting banged up. That's just what happens when you punch a visor or a helmet. Anyone who's played senior hockey is going to know that's the case.
Right. And remnants from the Cleven fight too, right? He already had his hands cut the other day. So
I'm glad you picked up on the Cleven fight as well, Ken, because the one thing I would say about this is, Lowry said it afterwards. He said he didn't like the hit, but he didn't think there was anything wrong with the hit. It's basically, one of those things where some of people in hockey are like, fights are so stupid. I mean, that's a clean hit. I thought that was a great hit that was thrown on Mason Appleton there by
Romanov.
Romanov, another Russian defenseman that the Canadians lost young. Anyway, but what I thought in that situation was, does it have to be at this stage, Adam Lowry trying to cool the temperature down every single game? I'll be honest, I didn't like it. And I thought there should be someone out there with a feeling that okay, it's your turn now, right? For anyone who doesn't know, Adam Lowry went out. He went after Sergachev after that. He knew Sergachev wouldn't engage in a fight. So he went to the next face-off and said, hey, does anyone out here want to account for Sergachev's hit over there? And Anders Lee stepped up and said, yeah, I'll do that, right? But in my mind, Ken, I get the fighter's code. I have miles of respect for Adam Lowry doing that. I just don't think after he just had to do that against the Ottawa Senators again in a hit that I didn't think was a bad hit, but it was just Adam Lowry trying to calm things down to keep his teammates safe so that things don't get too crazy for them. Right now, I don't like the idea that it was once again Adam Lowry who had to step up and initiate the process of keeping his team safe. The Winnipeg Jets, in my mind, in this game, it's an example of not having Brendan Dillon. I know this is a long time coming. The Winnipeg Jets are succeeding without him. I just think that if this is what's going to continue happening, not just for the rest of this year, but next year, eventually it's going to catch up to the Winnipeg Jets that they're leaving Adam Lowry to carry too much of this load, in my mind.
Yeah, and Sean, I mean, what are we talking about? You sort of already touched on it. The Jets are looking for Brendan Dillon at the deadline. Type, right? That exact type of player. And he's a guy that wanted to be here and stay with the Jets. So, again, we talked about part of the reasons why, and part of the reasons why the Jets kind of felt comfortable, allowing him to move on was they wanted Sandberg in a second line role. And, one has to assume, based on what we've seen on the ice this year, that they still wanted to see more from Logan Stanley. And, but right now the Jets defense corps would look better if Brendan Dillon was part of it, especially because Brendan Dillon, Sean, actually played on the right side and was probably better than any of the other guys they've tried on the right side, whether that's Stanley or, limited, Dylan Sandberg on that side.
Agreed.
So
and I would say this, Ken, I think what you would be replicating in that situation is you would be replicating that old, great Winnipeg Jets defense core, where Jacob Trouba moved up the lineup and then supplanted Tyler Myers, who moved down to the third pairing. And Tyler Myers on the third pairing was great in that 2018 run for the Winnipeg Jets. Brendan Dillon, that is definitely something, especially when you see all the cap space that the Winnipeg Jets have. That was a missed opportunity, because right now Brendan Dillon would be able to take care of all the things that we've been talking about. He would be able to bring a physical element. Now that Dylan Samberg has taken a step up, I don't know how he would have felt about Dylan Samberg supplanting him on that second pairing. I think what we've seen from it is that Dylan Samberg's taken his game to a place that Brendan Dillon couldn't, but Brendan Dillon has a style of game that Dylan Samberg does not, that I think, to your point, the Winnipeg Jets are really missing right now, and are probably going to go out at the trade deadline in the next couple of days here to try and cover off. It would have, in my opinion, Ken, really paid off for the Winnipeg Jets were they to have kept him in the fold. That didn't happen, but listen, if you need something to pay off, you can take action right now. If you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out before we get into the awards?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of this community, including our podcast.
All right, Ken, got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got? Johnston Group, Kenny and Renny. OG's got you covered. Play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to stick with some consistency here. And, even though we talked about maybe reasons why, Adam Lowry's value, outweighs stepping up for an opponent when he has to sit for 5 minutes, I think you have to be consistent. And in this situation, I'm going to be consistent. I think that Lowry standing up for Appleton is something that, once again showed leadership. And, as Adam pointed out, he would do it again. And you understand why. That, you can't just do it every once in a while. If, you're making a point of standing up for teammates, he did it again. And, he decisively won the fight. And even though it sort of woke up the Islanders, you can't worry about the result of what the opponent does. You can just worry about how you handle your own business. So I'm going with that play in a game that didn't have a ton of examples.
You know what? I think you're right, Ken, but I also think this is an example of how fights can work in your direction. Now, everyone thinks, oh, you went out, you won the fight, you automatically get the energy. There you go. But there's a value to a guy like Anders Lee somewhat stepping out of his weight class. I mean, Anders Lee is a scorer, far more of a scorer than Adam Lowry is. That's not necessarily his role. He steps into a role he doesn't take. Why? Well, probably because the captain of the opposition is standing across, trying to kind of embarrass your team, and he steps up into a role he probably shouldn't be stepping up into. Doesn't win that fight, like you said, Ken, but stands in there in that fight, comes out of it no worse for wear. And then the New York Islanders take off. So this is kind of one of the things that now a lot of people think everything's stupid. They don't think that there's any value in any of these kind of things. I couldn't disagree more. I think it's pretty obvious that the other time when Adam Lowry got in a fight, the Winnipeg Jets jumped up. Tonight it happens for the New York Islanders. Almost always there's a change in tone in the game when something like that happens. Just didn't work out for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. But the message that is carried forward for the Winnipeg Jets players is that our captain has our back. Our captain is going to keep us protected, and our captain has us covered. And that is, my friends, why this is the Johnston Group. We've got you covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that is the Kenny and Renny Johnston Group. Kenny and Renny OGs got you covered play of the game. Keg save of the game. What do you got, Ken? You muted your mic.
Sorry about that. In a game where the goalies were, pretty much even, each with 26 saves, there were plenty of examples at both ends, but I'm going to go with the Kyle Connor wrister off the mask of Sorokin. because it sort of exemplifies how the game went for Kyle Connor. Again, it's not a knock on him, but that's a situation where I think the shot was with intent. I'm not saying he planned to shoot him in the mask, but I think he wanted to buzz the tower there. And, Kyle's a sniper. Like usually that's going, off of post and in. In this case, Sorokin makes a really, really good save, and he kept Kyle Connor off the board for the remainder of the game also. So just because of the type of save that it was, I'm going with that one. Even though, again, I think Connor Hellebuck was very good in the game also, and had a couple of quality looks himself. But just based on where Kyle Connor is at in terms of his production, I thought that the save by Sorokin was both a timely one and one that maybe frustrated his opponent.
The save on Kyle Connor when he was kind of wide open in the slot there for me is the one that was the save of the game. Got to hand it to the Sorokin, who won the Sean Reynolds Award on this night. That's two in a row. Two in a row that Connor Hellebuck loses the Sean Reynolds Award or stat. That doesn't happen very often. Regardless, that's both Ken's and my hashtag the keg save of the game. It doesn't matter what we think. Matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. And the winner from our last show, that would be Savage 09100. Savage 09100. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And Ken, that brings us to the TCB lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, repeatable goals we talk about all the time. And, although a lot of the repeatable goals come at 5-on-5, Sean, today I think that I'm going with a Nikolai Ehlers goal along the goal line for the Winnipeg Jets, not only because it allowed the Jets to score twice with the man advantage, but it unveiled another wrinkle that we hadn't really seen a whole lot of this season. He went with the Gabe Vilardi move on the other side of the goal line, and it just went out to the Jets have been a threat with the man advantage all year long, and it had gone quiet for six games, which is a long time in the grand scheme of things. It's not a long time for an average power play. It's a long time for the best power play in the league. And the fact that they went out and got 2 in this game, for me, I think was important. And the Ehlers goal was obviously the prettier of the 2.
I thought it was a repeatable goal in the idea that not specifically that goal over and over again, but the idea that I talked about before of the power play, figuring things out, slowly digging in, figuring out a way to probing for the weaknesses. So for me, I agree that's the TCB lamplighter of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. Share with us your TCB lamplighter. You're automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, you know what to do. Head on down to join them at TransCanada Brewing Company at their tap room at 11290 Kenniston, where they've got great food, great times, and great beer, which you will know if you win that Lamplighter Award and get to go pick it up. Like this person has, Tracy O. I believe it's Tracy O'Kranick. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will send you I will email you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. You will find out very soon, Tracy, that it is the nectar of the gods. That's it. Ken, anything to say before we get going?
Yeah, you bet. You can take care of yourself, especially when it comes to the fisticuffs. But I know there was one comment by the commenters. I think it was it came with a joking manner also, but I'm going to stand up for you, even though you don't need protection. I chose the lamplighter last game when it was Roy Mack. It wasn't Sean. The fix was not in because he appreciated the exchange. I picked the lamplighter that day, and I had no idea that Sean had an exchange with him that day. So much like Adam Lowry had his line mates back, Sean, I have yours in that situation also, even though I'm probably overreacting. But just want people to know that the fix was not in.
Yeah, the funny part about that is it's just an effort to reach out and connect and show everyone how we appreciate you. So when we see someone, Roy Mack, who we've met at some TCB parties before, he and my buddy Dwighty went deep one night there. It was pretty
yes, they did
to watch. I mean, it's funny when I saw that afterwards that someone would suggest the fix was in. It was just an effort to say, hey, folks, we see you, we know you, we know a lot of the folks there. We love getting to know everybody there. And I kind of wanted to point out for that case. Someone was saying here earlier on, do not let this become a political show. We have no intention of doing that. We don't want to go down that road. Some things we feel like, at times, end up being touched on. I hope people aren't so fragile that they can't handle a little bit of talk here or there, but that's not the purpose of this show. That's not what we're trying to turn it into. But I thought it was a good example of something that we have always done really well on this show. We've reached out and we've talked to people when they're going through tragedy. We've reached out and we've talked to people when they're going through loss. We've reached out and we've talked to people when good things are happening. Kenny and Renny very much know that we are nothing without our audience, and we mean to show them respect in these interactions. That's all the thing with Roy Mack was about. I never put Ken up to this. I didn't know he was going to touch on that. I don't think he needed to. I think for the most part, people know that we just like to make sure that we, point to the people in the chat room and the people who reach out to us and say, we see you and we appreciate you. And that's what I'd like to say right now about all you folks. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know there's a large swath of the Kenny and Renny audience who have a very hard time with losses this year. So the folks who keep coming in all the time, the way that so many of you do, it is greatly appreciated. And if you appreciate, or if that appreciation is reciprocated, I would like to have you make sure that you reciprocate that appreciation towards our sponsors, because they fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan. Welcome once again to Flame and Comfort, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnston Group, and of course the Keg and TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you folks. Kenny and I will continue on the road. We will do this all over again with you on Thursday after they play the Philadelphia Flyers. If they haven't made a move by then, well, at least there will be a game to talk about, and we'd love it if you would join us. Talk to you later, folks.